as some believe, the soul wishes peace, but the brain seeks sweet revenge. Is that a formula for confusion? The majority of faith traditions have always valued forgiveness, but now there is a growing body of scientific evidence that says holding on to grudges is harmful and that forgiveness is good for health. Dr. Everett Worthington at Virginia Commonwealth University and Dr. Kathleen Lawler Rowe at East Carolina University are two of the many scientists around the world now looking at the value of forgiveness, using measurements like breathing patterns, heart rate, blood pressure, and sweat.
In 1998, there were about 58 studies that studied forgiveness scientifically. In 2005, we located about 950 studies. So between 1998 and 2005, the scientific study of forgiveness absolutely exploded.
To what extent do you still feel either a grudge or negative feelings when you think about this man and these childhood experiences?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm able to be neutral. I can feel my heart beating right now. So I wouldn't say I'm able to be neutral, but I'm able to be much less affected.
When I bring people into the laboratory, I ask them to tell me about a time when someone deeply upset you, hurt you, betrayed you. And some people immediately say, well, where do you want me to start? I have a long lists. They could talk about lots of different people in that context. Other people sit and think and think and think and struggle to come up with something. And I think that's part of the forgiving personality is more forgiving people are just a little less. 10 is.
Uh-oh.
I don't know, a 5 or a 6?
When a person walks into the laboratory, we have a few minutes where they sit and we try to get a resting level. And interestingly, highly forgiving people have lower blood pressure just walking around in the world every day. But when we bring them into the lab, we ask them about a time when someone betrayed them, and everybody's blood pressure increases when they talk about this emotional moment.
During the ride home that, he wanted me to come to his dorm with him, and I said no and stuff. And we talked a little bit outside, and he was being kind of pushy. He had me in the corner at one time, being just very violent and aggressive.
But the amount of initial increase is really not the critical factor. The critical thing is how long that blood pressure remains elevated. And people who are talking about a time that they are still very unhappy about and that they have not been able to resolve or forgive, their blood pressure stays elevated for a longer period of time. Okay, this shows you blood pressure when we started out is very normal, very healthy, 121/83. And then as you start talking about this event, it goes up to 156/87, and then 164, and here it's 184/127.
Oh my goodness.
This is an event that really triggers a reaction in you.
I really don't like that guy, do I?
No.
Oh, wow.
But at least many of the stories that I have heard have been profoundly disturbing, and the person will never forget what has happened to them. But I have seen instances of people completely coming to resolution about it. They show the pattern of the forgiving person, that their blood pressure increases, but it drops off as they talk about it, and they're very quickly back to normal. Where someone else may have a far more trivial incident, but if they're hanging on to it for dear life, you see the pattern of the maintenance of blood pressure and the slow recovery. So I don't think the severity determines the health effects. It's really how the person is able to kind of incorporate this past experience into their lives. When we look at gender, it really matters how we're measuring forgiveness. If we're looking at the forgiving personality, I tend to be a forgiving person. I value the importance of forgiveness. I don't harbor grudges. Women tend to score a little higher on the personality inventory than men do.
Monday when I went to work.
But then when we ask about a specific event, how much did you forgive your wife or husband or coworker in a specific situation, then men tend to score a little bit higher. So It's ambiguous. Women think of themselves as more forgiving, and maybe in general are across lots of different situations, but in the one hard moment to forgive, men tend to be a little more forgiving.
There was really legitimate damage.
In terms of age, it's been interesting that people seem to get a little bit more forgiving with about every decade in life.
Young people who are coming to college, these people, if they're 18, they were 13 when 9/11 happened. The entire adult mental life that they've experienced has been in an environment of justice and payback.
How far does our altruism or our justice motive extend? Make them give up.
As I've watched the young people come into the college environment, I see that a lot of them really value forgiveness, but they don't really often understand what forgiveness is. Sometimes they think, well, forgiveness is something I do when the other person has apologized and groveled at my feet, and then I can forgive them. After total justice has been achieved, well, then forgiveness is that thing that kind of just finishes it. They don't see that forgiveness can actually work hand in hand with justice.
You know, I got a question for you. You know, the space that they're creating in New York City where the Twin Towers went down. There was a proposal to set aside a portion of that space, a small portion of that space, as a garden of forgiveness. How many think that you should erect a garden of forgiveness?
The short follow-up there, and I know you got thrown into this. This is in the middle of the series, but I wanted to start this out by showing that we're going to see the second part in a moment here, showing that that we're healthier people when we learn to forgive. We do it for ourselves, and as you'll see as this goes along, the person or situation that has harmed us, we may never see that person again. We may never have the opportunity to reconcile. It may never happen. Usually doesn't happen. So I want to start out with this, that we do this for our own well-being. Not selfish at all, but we do it for our own health. These people are academics, and we say, well, they study this stuff. Can they really, are they really forgiving people? Do they put this into practice? And I want to show you the second half. It'll speak for itself about how we actually get beyond the academics of forgiveness to real practice. So go ahead.
My mother went to bed on a New Year's Eve night, and during the course of the night, a young man, or perhaps more than one, broke into the house.
I got a call that I needed to respond to the home that had been burglarized. When I arrived on the scene, the house was totally destroyed, ransacked, things on the floor, everything had been just turned upside down inside the home. And then I did observe Mrs. Worthington laying in the floor.
He had a crowbar that he used to break the window and the door. And when he was confronted, apparently he struck her and then beat her repeatedly in the head.
Not long after, police made the arrest.
He did finally tell us about going into Mrs. Worthington's home and about details about the inside of the home that no one else would have known, and incidents of how Mrs. Worthington was knocked down. He was charged with the murder, and the lead investigators took the presentment to the grand jury for an indictment on the suspect, and there was not an indictment given by the grand jury because of some issues with evidence.
And as I would see these events unfold, my feelings of the injustice would rise up. And as I saw that social justice being defeated again and again, I would get angry at it.
What if somebody hurts somebody in my family? Should I be upset? Yeah, okay. In fact,
I don't see how a person could walk into a situation where their mom was brutally murdered and be able to forgive. But I was given such an incredible gift to be able to study forgiveness scientifically for 6 or 7 years before this occurred, therapeutically for 10 to 12 years before that. And then when the moment came, where I needed to put that into practice, the gift was already there.
I think it's good that someone can find forgiveness. I don't know that I could, to be honest with you. Knowing the brutality of the attack and what happened to that lady that night, if that would have been one of my family members, I truly don't think that I could find it in my heart to forgive someone for that.
Within 6 months of her murder, all 3 of us children said we forgave the person who did this. This is a testament to my mom and dad and to the teaching that they successfully conveyed. Forgiving was honoring to her. It was not a betrayal of her. It was honoring.
One way Everett Worthington continues to honor his mother's memory is to help his students with their own forgiveness issues. A surprising number of students carry very heavy burdens.
Me through. I had a friend who was very suicidal and depressed, and May 18th, he actually succeeded in killing himself. I'm still just not quite there yet with him to forgive him for what he's done.
So who wants it first?
One technique Dr. Worthington uses involves 2 chairs. The student is asked to role play, becoming both the accuser and the accused.
Hey Matt, what's up? As a friend, I was hoping I could be there for you and do everything I can, and you just up and left. That we weren't good enough to be a friend, I guess, in a sense, and that's how we felt when you went and did the stupid thing you did. No, it's not as if y'all weren't my friends. Y'all are my friend and will forever be my friend. And I guess I didn't want to try to drag y'all down too.
It gets people out of that focus on their own pain and gets them to think about, gee, that other person may have been in some pain too. That can be a revelation.
Always thinking of us, huh? I don't know.
If I can help them make a fundamental change, that they become a little more forgiving and they are able to deal with a substantial trauma in their life, by the time they get 30, 40, 50, I'm hoping that their character will be very different.
A little foretaste of a subject we all could learn better and take to heart, couldn't we? Do we have another song?
Yep.
Okay.
Lord of Justice. Assuming they have